You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 473 of the podcast. And in this one, I got on Stephen Smith. Stephen is a good friend and CEO of NOCD. NOCD, of course, are the sponsors of this podcast and have supported my work for many years now, which is great. And NOCD, the main goal is improving access to therapy for OCD. And they do that through hiring therapists, providing a platform which people can interact on, get access to that therapy, get access to a community. And they've grown a lot over the last 10 years now. So it was great to get Stephen on to share his OCD story. He has done it before on the podcast, but he shares it again. And then he goes mainly into the story of NOCD, which is, I think, important to share, because I think sometimes people could view NOCD as this company, which of course it is. But I think it's important to see the passion, the drive, the commitment behind it, all the highs and lows, the ups and downs. Their mission is big, and they've really been committed to actioning that mission over the last 10 years. And it's always inspiring to speak to Stephen and his team, and it's great to be able to share their story with you now. And hopefully it gives you a bit more insight into NOCD and the passionate people that are behind it. And thank you to NOCD for supporting the podcast. NOCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NOCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. And of course, thank you to you guys for listening. It means a lot. And without further ado, here is Stephen and NOCD's story. Welcome back to the podcast, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Stu. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no worries. It's good to have you back on. Obviously, I've seen you many, many times over the years, but I should have checked before this. When was the last time you were actually on the podcast? Because you've been on a couple of times.
Yes.
Was it 2018 or?
It must have been around then. I think it was 2018. Yeah. 2018 or 2019.
Something like that. Yeah, because you were on in 2016 for the first time, I think. Early 2016, I think. And then, yeah. So yeah,
it might have been 2020. It might have been right during the pandemic.
Okay,
yeah. But I appreciate you having me back 5 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always welcome. So, let's start. Before we get into sort of NOCD's story, which obviously is a story in and of itself, and it's worth telling and expanding on. You have shared your story before on the podcast. A couple times in different stages. But it'd be good to, just get an update on that, just to maybe a brief summary of your story, and then just any changes that have happened since you were last on, for you personally.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the personal changes since I've been last on. So, in 2020, the end of the year, I ended up getting married. So, so my wife, Kara, and I, we had a New Year's Eve wedding. It was half virtual, half in person, just given the pandemic, and we were in an outdoor arena, which was very cold in San Antonio at the time, but it was a fun time. So we got married. We've had since then 2 children. So I have a nearly 3-year-old, a 3-year-old son, and then I have a 6-month-old. That's in addition to my son Aiden, who's 14. So we have 3 children, and then we have 2 dogs. So our family then also moved to San Antonio, Texas. So originally was from Chicago, Illinois, and I was living in Chicago, Illinois. But then during the pandemic, we actually relocated to San Antonio. So yeah, the few updates there, and then but besides that, not much has changed. Yeah.
Awesome. So plenty. But aside from business, plenty to keep you busy.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It's fun though, right?
Oh, 100%.
Makes life worth it. And in terms of OCD, so to give you like the recap for what my experience was like, I have OCD. I had a sudden severe onset of it in college after my sophomore year. where I started having the unwanted, intrusive thoughts, taboo intrusive thoughts, and my themes morphed quite a bit during that time period, and it was complemented by a lot of the mental rituals, while alongside some Google searching, right, and some reassurance seeking. And I eventually, after getting misdiagnosed 6 different times, became housebound because my symptoms were so severe. I developed severe depression too. And yeah, at that point, I didn't really know what to do. And so I started to search online for help. And that's where I stumbled upon a community of other people who were going through the exact same thing as me. And they talked about their symptoms and they talked about their story. And I was like, wait a second here. That's identical to what I'm going through. Yeah, what is this? And that's when I started learning more about OCD. And that was the kind of the turning point for me. Because once I learned about the condition and learned about the symptoms, I was like, wow, it's really similar to what I'm going through. Where can I go get help? Right. And then I started to learn more about help and eventually found a specialist that did exposure and response prevention therapy. There was only one in my area, and she had a long wait list. She charged about $350 out of pocket per session. But nonetheless, I found a way to see her with the help of a family member, and I started seeing the provider, and she started me on ERP therapy. She diagnosed me prior to that, and eventually, with the support of my family and friends and everyone else, I was fortunate enough to get better. So I learned how to do treatment and learned how to then, as a result, conquer my OCD. And it's a journey, though, Stu, as you know, right? It's not something you just like can say you've completely eliminated, right? Like you live with OCD, you just learn how to manage it. It's chronic in nature, and I've really embodied, a lot of other principles too with just my OCD treatment, such as eating healthy, sleeping, meditating, praying, going to the gym and maintaining, my physical fitness. Like those are the things that have really helped me too, in addition to traveling and being a part of my family. So like I've taken not just like a very, um, linear approach with treatment. I've taken somewhat of a horizontal approach as well. And so, it's also given me a chance to start an OCD and just to scale it to this point with the help of our team, of course. So having a kind of a balanced lifestyle has really given, I guess, the fuel needed to persevere, and also it's given our team the fuel to persevere. So today, my hope is to be able to talk about not just my OCD story, but really the NOCD story, because I think a lot of people, they know the story that has been shared about my journey with OCD, but they don't really know the NOCD story, like how we went from an idea to a point where we are treating now, each month, tens of thousands of people all over the world. And, I think as we take that next step, it's important for people to know where we've come, because there are many amazing people that have supported this journey, and they think the story of the company, although like I'm directly involved with the company, I think it's a story of the team, not necessarily the story of one person. And I want to make sure that that story can be told, because it's pretty incredible to see what's happened here over the last decade.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been awesome to witness it. I remember 2015, 2016, whenever it is, I saw those initial, I think you must have sent them to me, the initial like app designs before it was even built. I can still remember them like clear as day. So yeah, the where you guys are now, it's drastic. I mean, it was great back then, but like drastically different. Couple of questions on your personal story, just my own curiosity that I don't really have the answers. Oh, I do to one of them, but you studied at some point in China, right, as part of your college degree? Is that?
Yes. It's actually also part of the NoCD story. So I did in 2015. So I was in China. I was actually not studying. I was teaching English as a second language.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I was teaching English as a second language. It was basically to, first of all, get some experience speaking Chinese. I was minoring in Mandarin Chinese at the time. But it also was to pay for the bills, because I was spending so much time on NoCD that I needed actually income while being able to have enough time to actually just to build the product and to scale the product. Like, when you're starting a company,
Yeah.
every ounce of energy, every dollar goes into it. And so by getting,
Yeah.
a job as an English teacher in China, I was able to have room and board, and that gave me the backstop me to actually go in and start the company. Um, so, that's the reason I was in China.
Wow, amazing. And yeah, I guess I was just going to ask what it was like being in China when you were dealing with OCD, and you kind of spoke the language, it sounds like, but I'm guessing you weren't fluent, and it's a very different language to English. What was that like for you, or did you already have your OCD
Yeah.
somewhat under control at that point?
Yeah, I've never been asked that question still, but it's a really, really interesting question. I was dealing with OCD pretty severely when I was there. So I'll just kind of back up. In 2014, I was going through treatment, and I started to really see progress towards the end of 2014. But I wasn't like, by any means better. I was like improved, but I had a lot of work still left to be done. And so by February of 2015, I was actually, I'd say maybe like 20% more improved than I was at the end of 2020, or the end of 2014. And that's when I went to China. And so when I was in China, like I was probably good half the time. The other half the time, I was really struggling to the point where like I didn't feel comfortable traveling outside of the city I was at, just because my OCD at times was still very severe. So, like I'd go to sleep at night. I'm like, man, like I'm like not sure if I can function right now. And I think that plus the fact that the diet was very different in China, um, created a situation where like I was some days I was great, but other days I was not good at all. And I'd have like random episodes that would flare up every now and then, and it just became a really difficult experience, because when you're in China, like you don't have a support system like you do here at home, right? Wherever home
Mm,
is. For me, it was the US. And so that's what happened. So it was a difficult time.
yeah,
And there was no virtual therapy. So like we had to kind of
true.
use the tools that were available, which was, one, talking with peers in the community, two, um, just using self-help books, using just your own experience that you just went through in treatment to hopefully guide you through that moment. So that's what I did. I was just very focused around um, using the tools that I had available, which at the time wasn't much.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say, I mean, rightly, that online therapy, Zoom therapy, however it was delivered, wasn't really available at that time, which sounds mad now that when you say that, it sounds insane. That why couldn't we video call at that time? Of course we could. Skype was a thing and stuff like that, but therapists just weren't doing it. And I remember doing a
Right.
podcast in maybe 2017 on like virtual therapy for OCD or something like that. And I remember when I was covering it, like feeling like, why isn't this done? It's so obvious and so simple, but it was such a taboo subject. And I remember, I could be wrong here. I get the vibe that some people were kind of against it, like it wasn't a good thing. And now almost every therapist will do it. So it was
Yeah.
such a shit. The pandemic obviously forced therapists to take on telehealth
Right.
and teletherapy.
Totally. And it showed that, and for people with OCD, just given that, when you're doing exposures, right? Like when you're doing exposures in an environment, you actually have them, and your service isn't
Yeah.
available. It's like it's probably the most effective, right? And that's what we've seen with research too, is that the virtual ERP therapy isn't often, you parallel the status quo. It's actually in many cases better, right? And so that's what
Mm.
we've seen, and it's probably a better patient experience too, because like you don't have to travel and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of that from our own work, but it's to your point, it's totally true, right? It just that in 2015 didn't have that. But what was your second question? You said you had a second question.
Yeah,
It's,
do you know, I'll try and weave it in because I think it's going to be better later on in the story if I remember it.
yeah,
I think it just will be
yeah.
a bit out of place right now. So let's get into the NoCD story. Where do you want to begin with that?
Okay, so just to kind of give you an overview. So 2024, I had a severe onset of OCD, as I mentioned. I think I always had OCD symptoms,
Hmm.
Like when reflecting back growing up, I had a fear, like, what if I had a pen cap stuck in my throat? I'd literally spend time in class in high school trying to check to make sure I didn't have a pen cap stuck in my throat, which sounds ridiculous, but I just like wasn't sure if I accidentally swallowed a piece of my pen cap while chewing on it, right? Like, and so I would just, for days on end, just constantly try to check. I'd also have fears of what if I was actually sick, and I would go to the doctor just to ensure I wasn't sick. Like, just in retrospect, like there were signs of OCD, but I didn't actually know I had OCD until like I really became severe. And that was after my sophomore year of college in the summer. And like I just talked about my story, but was misdiagnosed, mistreated, went through the ringer, eventually got to treatment, regained my life. But when I was in treatment, I realized very quickly that treatment wasn't built for the way in which people with OCD function across their daily life, right? Like, if you think about it, right, you go and you see your therapist for 1 hour a week, but then between sessions, you're on your own. And that's when oftentimes you suffer the most if you have OCD. And so I was really bothered by that because I'm like, I'm seeing this therapist, but then between sessions, I go home and that's when I have to like really implement the teachings that my therapist offered me. And that was very difficult. Like, how am I supposed to go and do an exposure when I have family all around? Or if I'm trying to find a way to make ends meet, 'cause I wasn't in school at the time. Like, there were just so many nuances that were very challenging on top of living with OCD, right? And so that really bothered me. And initially, the idea for NoCD was, what if you had an application on your phone or an application on your smartwatch that allowed you to better manage OCD episodes when they happen? And then at the same time, allowed you to better do your ERP therapy homework, and gave you all the tools to effectively do that in just one centralized place. And it would track data. It would automatically allow you to share that data with your provider. And it just like made your experience between sessions that much easier. Okay. So that was a very big personal problem that I faced in treatment. And, so I was like, wow, this feels to me like a no brainer. Like, someone has to do something about this because between sessions, it's so miserable just functioning on your own. And so, as part of that, just like one day when I was on a road trip, going up to Dallas to drop off my now sister-in-law, like I was on a notepad just sketching out this idea because I was in the middle of treatment. I wasn't in school, and I wasn't playing football. It was actually during the same time we were my previous school was having a big game, and I was just sketching out this idea, which then became notes to be on the back of a notebook, right? 'Cause I didn't have anything else. Just in a road trip, just driving up I-35 in Texas, sketching out this idea. And as I reflected on it, I was like, man, this idea makes a lot of sense. Let's actually make a formal plan to implement it. And so I started calling up different psychologists that I knew. I was like, what are your thoughts on this? This is an idea we have. Or I have, like, I'd love to know what you're thinking. And people are like, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. And I started calling up some of my friends from school, and one of them that was, that transitioned from school because he graduated, was looking for a role, and he was all about it. So I was like, all right, let's do something about this. So started for a year building different prototypes with the guidance of some great mentors. Like, if you want to start, this, you just got to build a prototype. And so I literally like drafted different documents to write out what this prototype should look like. And the prototype eventually became sufficient enough to actually send to an engineer. We hired this intern. Like, this guy spent like a couple months trying to build it, like completely with no problem, like get it, like, early on intern. We realized quickly this is actually very difficult to do. We have to actually find expertise that can implement such a prototype. And, part of the problem of learning was we just didn't design it. So we had to redesign it. We use a service called Fluid UI. And literally, they screen by screen into we went through a screen by screen with this whole prototype, and we sketched it out. And I remember I was spending, like, it was Christmas in 2014. I was literally just building this wireframe every single second of the day for like several days on end, and eventually built it out. And it looked like you would expect. Like, I'm not a designer by training, but it didn't look very good, but was sufficient enough to get the job done. And we actually would record it. So to make sure that this was worthwhile to invest in, and we would record ourselves using this kind of wireframe, and we wanted to get clinical validation on it. So we would take the recording and we'd package it up into a clip, and we would send it to different clinicians that we knew specialized in OCD. We'd cold contact them, we'd send them this video, and we asked for feedback. And that might be to do what we sent you way back in the day. And so we got a bunch of feedback, and we just reiterated on it. And then eventually we got to a point where we had enough feedback where we didn't actually, need to like make another cycle. It was time to actually implement the prototype. So I kind of put together some money that I had in the bank, like almost all of my savings, and built out this more professional looking wireframe. And because of all my savings, I had to find a job, right? Because I was like, this is like, I'm out of money here. I'm working at part time while trying to manage my own OCD, and I was out of school. I need to find an actual job to get this off the ground. So that's when in 2015, I was like, okay, it's time to go and find another job. Well, I need a job that can pay for my room and board while I can work on this. And so that's what drove me out to China. And I started teaching English in China, English as a second language, while building the initial design, because we hired a professional designer. They designed like the platform, the V1 of the platform. And in China, the job was to go get more feedback, to see if we can iterate on a little bit more, to create a custom business plan that we can then use to raise capital needed to finance the development of this app. And so that's what we would do. So in China, I would teach English during the day. I would work out in the afternoons, and at the same time, I would build, with this colleague of mine, the business plan, as well as I get the more data to eventually go and raise capital. We make pitch decks and whatnot. And, we pretty much try to talk to every investor we could possibly talk to. And at the same time, we were getting mentorship from one of the best entrepreneurs, honestly, in the world in healthcare, Glenn Coleman. And he was at the time starting a company called Livongo, which became a huge success. And he'd give us every now and then, an hour of his time, and would guide us into really what we should be doing in certain cases, and just giving his advice. And so that was helpful, especially as we were in the early phases. But we eventually got to a point where we had a business plan, we had the prototype built, we had enough clinical feedback, we had to actually go and raise money. We created a pitch deck. No investor would fund us because I was in China, and I was doing these calls in the middle of the night, essentially, just to try to get some interest. And I realized that we're probably not going to raise investor dollars just yet. We probably have to do something different. So we had advice that we should try to raise a friends and family round of funding. But to do that, I had to go back into the US. And so packed my bag and back to the US. Ended up re-enrolling into school. I went to Pomona College, and that I realized that was actually a way to not only finish my degree and finish playing football, but also pay room and board so I can continue doing NOCD in a really low cost way. And then so we raised a total of $80,000 in the fall of 2015. And that was from friends and family. And that money was to be used to develop the NOCD platform. We had all these different quotes from different engineers that could help us. And one quote that we really went with was this group out in Armenia that would they had like a software development shop, and we didn't have that much money, so we wanted to go with a group that we could really work with that was low cost. And so we ended up going with that group. I was in school, going to class, and the goal was let's build the product first that we just tested for all that time. So I ended up building the product. I would project manage in the evenings. I go to school during the day, play football in the afternoon, and project manage at night. And just kind of would do that day in and day out for the entirety of the development process until it was actually developed in the spring of 2016. That's when it went live. So this is probably when we connected. And in that time period too, it was really interesting because our expectation was we launched this product and everyone loved it, right? We launched the product, we give it to different people, and sure, it was on the app where people were using it, but we got a lot of negative feedback just simply related to, okay, well, I love the clinical utilities, but the usability didn't work. And so we had all these people give us this feedback, and our goal was to get 50 people to try it. And honestly, it was a pretty challenging process just to get 50 people to sign up. But with the feedback came a lot of learning, and that inspired us to then create a V2. So as we were, as we kind of had V1 built, V2 was our kind of our second at bat, if you like, for lack of better terms. And so we ended up bringing on another design firm to help us like revamp the design. We brought on another set of engineers, and we really built out the V2 in 2016, while also trying to figure out how to best get people to go into the platform. And during that V2 process, again, I'm still in school at the time, you're trying to bring it to life. It was really challenging because like we raised money once, like you build a product, you have to go raise money again, and you're like, all right, well, how are you going to go do that to go out of V2? And so we were able to do it. Fortunately, had a great early stage partner who came in. His name's Goggin, and he helped finance a good percentage of the round. And then some of our advisors, were thoughtful enough to invest. They saw the amount of work we were putting in and the level of dedication and the prospects for the company. And so raised money, raised about $100,000. At this point, we're at 180,000, and we used the money to go and to redesign it as mentioned, and then to build out the V2. Took us about another 10 months, and so by the end of the year, 2017, we finally launched it. And at that point, like we had a lot of great feedback about the design, the revamp, and a lot of the functionality, but we ran into a lot of the same challenges, which was, hey, great clinical utility, would be willing to refer it to our patients, but yet at the same time, didn't actually, you know, have usability. Like people members would use it once or twice, and then they would just not use it anymore because and what we learned was doing ERP is very challenging, right? In theory, it's kind of like working out. Like in theory, you want to be really active all the time. You want to do your ERP all the time, but in practice, like it's very difficult to do that. It's actually you have to change your behavior, and you have to do something difficult during a time when you're really stressed out. And so that became a big challenge for us. And I would use the NoCD platform myself, and that's how I would actually figure out like you can actually use it to your benefit. Like I was personally using it, and it was personally helping me, especially in the moment of an episode. But like through that experience, like the consistent iteration time and time again, because when you have a firm that you're working with, you you really don't have a hands-on way to develop the platform, but you can what you call quality assurance test it. So like I was spending my time making sure every detail was perfect, which is why the platform ended up coming out to be user friendly for me and as well for others. But we learned at the time the need was for that second iteration to actually to rethink like really how do people do ERP therapy. And it was a pretty dark point because we raised 100 and $80,000. We're at the end of 2016. We've had like another iteration somewhat fail, and we had to make a decision like what do we do now? Like we have we're running out of cash sometime soon. Like we have a monthly burn rate that we're experiencing, and this is before we even raised a dollar venture capital funding. This is just during the angel round period. And at that point, still made a decision to keep going, right? Like we have to find a way to keep going, be more successful because it's important for the patient community with people who have OCD that they have better treatment given all the treatment challenges that personally I face, others face. And, at that point, that was right around the time the guy who I started the company with decided to leave, and Goggin and I decided to just really stick together to really build out the solution for the NoCD platform. And so, what the first thing that we did was we started to go back to our users and we asked them, if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing about your OCD treatment, what would you fix and why? And, like it was interesting. Like we started asking this question on social media. The answers were answers that we would often get, which is we want treatment to be, more cost effective. We would want to have an easier time doing our ERP therapy. We want, self-help tools. We want journals. We want progress reports, like all the things that we've already built. But from the dialogue, what we actually saw too was that people wanted community, because when we were asking the question, in the response thread, people would like each other's comments. They would talk about their OC story. They would share support for one another. And so it's like we were asking the question, what people were telling us they wanted were self-help tools. They wanted, you know, easier ways to do treatment, right? What they actually wanted was a way to connect with others like themselves. And that was a profound moment because that realization made us think that, okay, wait a second, we built self-help tools for people with OCD to give them support between sessions, but we really need to build is community alongside that. And so in 2017, that's when the business started to turn with that realization. So, the firm that we worked with for designing and managing the software, the second firm, didn't work out either. We ran into some problems at the end of 2016. We transitioned from them. And, I went to my good friend, Anil Vaitla, who I knew growing up. And he was working at Hulu at the time. And, we had like no money in the bank. I mean, we were pretty much, dry and cash. And I said, hey, I need your help, man. I mean, this was like a McDonald's at 3 a.m. in Santa Monica, California. And I was like, we need your help, because the platform is not going to sustain if we don't get some great engineering support. And I know you can get it up to speed. If we can do that, like we actually have a shot to build this company and make it great. And so he's like, all right, I got you. I'm going to help you on the weekends. And he did that. And so he pretty much saved the company in that time period. And so during that time period, we also would go and we would develop the platform together to try to do small iterations because this community idea was really impactful. Like we saw early signs and we made designs that people are actually really excited about this whole idea of having a community of other people with OCD connected to the NOCD platform. And so during the weekends, Anil and I, as well as another colleague who we brought in, and his name is Ilyas, you may know. He's our other co-founder. We would work on the project together. So we would sit in an office. We would, eat snacks, try to figure out ways to implement the community into the NodeCD platform. And this is by the time this was happening, we didn't have any cash. Like we were probably had at most $20,000 in the bank, and we were burning cash every month to cover our server costs. Finally built out the community feed. We launched as a beta, and we saw that, in fact, it worked even in like the most basic way, like in the most, like user unfriendly interface. The platform had much better engagement because people wanted to actually connect with others who they could relate with, right? Or relate to. And that was a huge moment for us because we knew we were onto something. We just had to figure out a way to put gas in the bank, for lack of better terms. So we didn't have at that point in time the stomach to go back to our existing investors and say, hey, we need more money, because we felt like that would have been inappropriate given we've already asked for 2 rounds of funding. And we wanted to bring in some revenue. And so we realized we have, this great community of people inside the NoCD platform. We would market it by connecting with people in the community and raising awareness on social media and building newsletters. We had a kind of following on social media, and we said, look, let's go and put this following to use, and let's put this user-based site to use, and let's go and see if we can make partnerships with other mental health care companies that'd be willing to pay us like a subscription to advertise with us. And so, as part of that process in 2017, I remember it very clearly, this was April in 2017, the ADAA was having a conference in San Francisco. And I was in LA. I was like, man, I can go up to San Francisco, drive up there, and see if there are any groups that would be willing to advertise with us. So I packed my bag the Friday night. It was a very on a whim type of trip, and drove up in the middle of the night to San Francisco to be at the conference on that Saturday. And so stayed at a buddy's house in Menlo Park, and at the conference met a bunch of people who were interested in what we were doing. But one person in particular was most interested. And she was running a residential center in SF. And she said, well, look, I know someone who actually is looking to market for different services. Like, let me connect you to him. And so, for a long story short, like that person ended up giving us our first $1,000 per month contract. Which, if you think about it, like for a company like ours, our server costs were $2,500 a month. We were seeing cash dwindle pretty quickly. We were not paying ourselves. So $1,000 a month like gave us, double the runway, right? Which is huge. So we actually extended our life by twice the amount, which was great. And so we ended up partnering with that group. We did a great job, and that contract grew to $2,500 a month to cover our server costs, which gave us more runway. And so we had that, that bank account that was, running out of cash quickly, all of a sudden started then to like, hold cash. And so with the cash, you're like, well, look, this is the answer. Like, get some sales here, right? With sales, you can actually stay alive. And so we kept on seeing progress in the community. We made it a little bit better and better each month. We started seeing progress with just like the traction within our newsletter and our social media. And so like, there were some real strong signs. And so to get more business, we ended up booking a trip to the Bio Conference in San Diego in 2017. And at that conference, our thought was, well, look, if we can figure out how to work with researchers, we may be able to actually bring in more revenue because, researchers need to find people for research. And we think we could offer a great subscription for that. So ended up getting to San Diego. It was just me. I booked a seat flight out there, and I was in the lobby on my laptop, just sending emails or whatever, and I was by myself. And these Canadian guys were in the lobby too. They're running what they call a CRO, a contract research organization in Canada, and they probably had like a few drinks, and they're looking at me like, what's this guy doing here on his laptop? While we were going to have dinner, and so they said, get off your laptop and come with me for dinner. Come with us for dinner. So all right. So I joined these guys for dinner, and they had a huge party of people, and they were like just teaching me all about how clinical trial recruitment works. And so I was like, man, this is pretty incredible. Like, you have all these different people who are researching different populations, and we have a bunch of people with this one condition that, not a lot of people know about, but it's really crippling. We could probably find a way to help research become we could find a way to help research become more effective and for people with OCD. And so in the bio conference, I pretty much spoke with everyone at the conference, anyone I could possibly meet with to learn about how to best fit into the community. And that was a huge moment for us because that gave us the insights needed to know like how we could actually augment research alongside some of these smaller advertising partnerships. And so with that kind of new information in the summer of 2017, started to contact different researchers that were interested in OCD. And I started like specifically look through clinicaltrials.gov. And at that point too, I saw that there was a research trial being done by a new life science firm, and it was being done in OCD, and they were actually in fact sponsoring the IOCDF for that summer conference. And the IOCDF conference was in San Francisco that year, if you recall, 2017. And so ended up booking a flight to San Francisco after getting in touch with the CEO of the company. And we were cold contact all these different people, and he was kind enough to respond, like gave him a full story of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and just like super super nice person. Gave me time in the morning for breakfast, and he was generous enough to do that. So I booked a flight out again, and I met him for breakfast. And at that time, we closed our first like real contract. And for background, at that point, like I still had a semester left to go in school, so I was. We signed the contract, we were getting it implemented. We were now actually able to not only cover our costs, but we had enough on our balance sheet to remain in business for some time. We had real revenue. We had to deliver for this contract. And so I was going back and forth that summer to start raising capital so we could actually have the resources needed beyond just what's on our current balance sheet to scale the business and deliver. And that's when we raised our first round of venture capital funding. But during that process, one quick story too, like we still had some challenges with the app along the way. And there was a point in time where you may find this relevant because I think I may have told you the story, but a point in time where we one day saw our entire platform crash. Like servers were down, we didn't know what to do. Like we weren't able to get into the platform even. We thought we got hacked. And it turned out that there was a researcher in the UK who on the show, I think it was called This Morning.
Okay, yeah.
And she went on the show and started talking about how this platform is really helpful. Like this is something that we reached on the other side of the world, and how she recommended patients use it. And that gave us so much traffic that it collapsed our servers. But it also was a really important point because it gave us the realization that like, look, if someone on the other side of the world could see this platform and find benefit in it, then we're really onto something. Like we don't have we're just marketing on social media. Like imagine what we can actually do if we made this a real business. And so at that point, our other co-founder, Larry Trusty, joined, and he really just helped us out. I mean, he did a huge solid and got everything more professional inside of NoCD. He took us from like a garage startup to actually a real company. And that's what allowed us to raise our capital here at the end of 2017. So 2018 I have this first round of funding. I graduated school literally like right at the end of the year 2017. So Neil, Ilias, and I move out to Chicago. Larry also joins us in Chicago. And then at that point in Chicago, we were trying to figure out again how to scale our contract with that one group. We were able to do that throughout the year. And we also learned that the NoCD platform as an adjunct to a therapist treatment not only was just as effective, but it was actually more efficient than the standard of care. And so like we were able to get contacted by a team of researchers from Columbia University Medical Center, and they wanted to study the platform. And at that time, they were able to get enough data to actually conclusively show the results were it wasn't just as effective, it was actually as effective and more efficient than the standard of care. And so that really inspired us because like when we were scaling the platform, the NoCD platform that was primarily used at the time to help people between sessions, we kept getting a request that, people like were grateful for help between sessions, but they needed a therapist first and foremost if they actually wanted to get better. And so like we had all these people saying the same thing, like, I need a therapist, where can I go to get help? And we were like, well, look, we don't know really we can send you because there aren't too many therapists that specialize in OT and ERP in our nearby area. But as the waiting list kept growing, we were at one point we're like, well, look, let's just build this. Like we've seen the fact that a therapist plus an OT platform is as effective and even more efficient. Let's go and build out the service that can help these people that we're serving today, truly get better. And so in 2018, we brought on Dr. Jamie Fiesner, our CMO, and we started building out the initial infrastructure for NoCD therapy. And then, along that journey in 2019, Dr. Patrick McGrath joined us to help scale it out. Dr. Stephanie Lonsley joined us and helped scale it out. We had all these clinicians on our team that were pivotal early on in helping us build out NoCD therapy. And we got the service off the ground the very beginning of 2019. In the meantime, we were trying to figure out how to scale the business. So we were delivering for our clinical trial treatment partner. We were, trying to find ways as an early stage company to hit our goals, and find other ways to grow, which were primarily very unsuccessful because people were saying to us, well, look, like OCD isn't a problem. Like I don't see OCD in my data. And those failures are actually very important for us, long term, because they showed how OCD is actually, very prevalent, but just super misunderstood. And that caused a data gap where people were getting historically mistreated. And when they got mistreated because they were misdiagnosed, they would get miscoded. And when they get miscoded, the data wouldn't show to the healthcare system. So the entire healthcare system was essentially missing this problem. Like this problem was submarined in the data because of the misunderstanding surrounding OCD. And so we were getting rejection after rejection. And when we made that realization, we realized, wow, like the key is actually to surface this problem to different healthcare companies if we want to solve the problem, especially the companies that are paying the bill for people with OCD when they go untreated. And so we realized, in 2019, that we'd have to find a way to work with payers as a result, health insurers, because they were the ones footing the bill when people with OCD would go mismanaged. And so we started seeing OCD therapy emerge right as we were having this realization. And so our thought was, well, look, we have this service now where people come in, they do face-to-face sessions with our therapist. In between sessions, they get always on support from peer community, self-help tools and whatnot. Like that's working, but like we just need these insurers to cover it. At the same time, like we need to get enough data to showcase that this is actually working, so we could, we could unlock the contract. So 2019 was essentially was figuring out how we could actually, take this product that we built and really shape it in a way where we had some initial adoption, and then we could unlock payers. Most insurers in the U.S. told us no about 5 times before they told us yes. And the reason for it was, again, the claim data issue, but also because, there wasn't much receptivity to telehealth at the time, right? Telehealth was a newer concept. They couldn't tell, are we a vendor or are we a provider? Like we were kind of both. And so we really, at the end of the day, had to figure out we were actually a provider. We were not a vendor. And that gave the insurance companies enough to say, okay, well, look, if you're just a provider, just virtual front door, virtual interface, like that's different than being a vendor. So we can treat you as a provider. And that's what unlocked our ability to actually start to work with some of these large insurance companies who are still somewhat skeptical of our work because they never really saw a company like ours before, and especially within behavioral health. So we get the product off the ground, we get NOCD therapy off the ground. We finally find a way to get 50 people to sign up. It took us an entire year to get 50 people to sign up. We thought it'd happen within like a month. It took an entire year. And then we're at the same time we're servicing this contract with this group that took a shot in us in 2017 to help really streamline their clinical trial recruitment. And then 2020 hits, and so we sign all these payers in 2019. We're kicking them off in early 2020. We're seeing more and more enrollment growth in the new NOCD therapy service in 2020. And then I remember this so clearly. In February 2020, the month before the pandemic, I get a phone call because we were able to successfully enroll that one trial. We were supposed to move on to another trial. And on that phone call, our partner, great partner, like just, great people at the company, but they ran into a little bit of a hiccup where they were supposed to, start another trial. And that trial just for some reason had some type of operational issue and it didn't start. So the day before that happened, or the day before it was supposed to start, we got the phone call saying the trial was no longer going to start. And then we lost about 99% of our revenue overnight. Because in February 2020, we were at a juncture where we had to make a decision. Like, we just raised another round of funding because in 2019 for NOCD therapy. We raised a seed round of funding, and that funding, was, very difficult to raise because we didn't have much of the service or much of the reputation. So like most investors told us no, but one investor, at the very 11th hour told us yes, so gave us another shot to scale the business. Um, but in 2020, that one partner that, that we had, a customer, they told us that they couldn't push us onto this new trial because the trial was no longer going to happen. And honestly, Stu, like that almost completely destroyed the business because we lost 99% of our revenue overnight. We had to make a decision. Do we want to, keep going and take a shot at scaling NOCD therapy and try to grow our way out of this hole? Or do we want to, transition the whole team and start to wind down the operation to make it really small enough where we could actually sustain, which would have effectively killed the business because it killed all the momentum. And so in that moment, our burn rate increased by over 100x. We said, we're going to go all in. We took the new investor resources and we said, we're going to bet on ourselves as a team and we're going to go all in here to try to make sure that we could scale NOCD therapy, given that we believe the service is needed for the OC community as opposed to winding it down before it ever started. And so we kept seeing in February 2020 that next level of growth rate. And at the end of that month, we started being able to show clinical outcomes to each of our payer partners who took the shot on us in 2019. Well, in the next month, in March, we didn't know this was going to happen, obviously, but the pandemic hit. And so in that moment, we had to make a decision. Should we scale NOCD further or do we take another step backwards given so many changes? And we're like, you know what? There are a lot of people that are going to need our services now because the world went virtual overnight. And so, as we were having that realization, so did our payer partners, our health insurer partners, I should say. Payer and health insurer are the same word here. And they said, okay, well, it's time to scale you all with us nationally because we need your help and we see what you can do and can you help us out? And we're like, you know what? Yes, we're going to figure out a way to do it. So we kept scaling with these health insurers. We went from being available in 3 US states to all 50 states in 9 months here in the United States. And, as part of that process, as part of that growth, we were able to literally grow out of that hole where we lost 99% of our revenue overnight in February. By July, we hit all of our year-long goals, and we were able to raise another round of funding, our Series A, because we showed we had product market fit. So it took us from literally 2014, an idea on a notepad, to 2020 to actually show product market fit. And all these different points along the journey, the company almost went under. Right? It was for some extra push and some luck where we didn't. And so I feel very fortunate though to have a great team that helped us get to this point because this was a really challenging path to sustain as a company in the early stage. And then when we reached product market fit in 2020, from 2020 until now, the business has stayed, like the sort of stayed very much the same, but it's gotten better and better each year because we've focused more and more on it. So we've just gained scale over the last 5 years. And today we can honestly say we're probably the largest specialty behavioral health company in the United States. And we've been able to get to this point though, because the team stuck together. So if you look at the last 5 years, the same team that scaled the business throughout that really challenging time period stuck together and have scaled it to a point where we now can serve, 155 million Americans in the U.S. Through their insurance provider. We can, get people into treatment, within 7 days on average, over, about 80% of the time. So like you're seeing the changes in the ecosystem, um, in the OC treatment ecosystem, I should say, because of all this perseverance that happened early on. Like there were so many moments where it would have been really easy to say, you know what, this ain't working out. Let's just part ways and do something different. But the team never actually did that. And I think that DNA allowed us to, or the DNA that we formed in those moments allowed us to really, really strong through points where we had to actually scale here in the last 5 years. You realize like nothing you're going to have to hit, or no issues you're facing are going to be larger than ones that we just saw early on. Right. And so that gave us a lot of confidence, honestly. And it helped us also find the right people for this company. Cause like, when you go through those experiences, the type of people you want to be with when the going gets tough. And we did that. And I think the last thing I'd say here on that topic, Stu, is, we, during the last 5 years, our mission has stayed front and center for every single person on the team because, it was the why behind the company was really solidified in those dark moments between 2014 and 2020. Right. And, we've been able to raise capital. We've been able to really scale up the company largely because of that mission, and the mission stems from the team. So and stems from the need in the community and the inspiration people in the community give us, like yourself. So I'm sharing that because, as we move forward here, we're going to keep that mission front and center, but it's important for the community to know where it comes from, right? Like we've personally lived these issues with OCD. We've had to, fight 24/7 in order to get the company to this point. And I can promise you we're going to fight 24/7 to get it to the point where we can, honestly say that, hey, the OCD crisis has ended globally, because you're always going to have OCD. It's a chronic issue, but the crisis doesn't have to be there. And, our goal is to end that crisis. So anyways, I just went on a long tangent here, a long story, but I'd love to, to get your thoughts.
Yeah, really. Thank you, Stephen. Really, really good to hear NOCD's story, because obviously I knew a lot of it, but there was a lot of nuance there and stories that I was never aware of,
Yeah.
So it's really awesome. I mean, I've always been inspired by NOCD, the work you and the team have done. But yeah, to know some of those real sort of like do or die moments is not something I've heard you talk about before, at least to me. So yeah, it was awesome to hear that, and how you navigated it, how you worked through it as a team. I've had many touch points with many different of your team members over the years, and all of them have always been really positive, really like passionate individuals about what they're doing. So I think as you were speaking about the mission there, it's obviously being filtered through the team and the company. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I guess something that impressed me when you and Ilias came over, when was it, like a year ago now, right? And we were talking, and you shared how many monthly clinical hours or therapy hours you were doing through NOCD. I don't know if you can share roughly what you do now a month.
Yeah,
that's not
per month. We do somewhere between about 60 to 80,000 sessions a month.
That's insane. Because a year ago you told me 25,000, so that's grown double. And then
there's been a lot of growth. Well, I mean,
wow.
In terms of hours and sessions, so there's sessions that are a little bit more. Hours, I mean, we do anywhere between, some of the sessions are 30 minutes long. We'll do anywhere between, in terms of hours between 52 and 65,000 hours.
Mad, yeah. So yeah, just call it 60. But that's insane, and that's incredible, man. To you and your team, like you said, when you started it, access was fairly limited, especially through insurance in the States. I think, what was it, less than 1% of Americans, USA Americans could get OCD care through their health insurance. And now, what are you up to now through
One of
NOCD?
two. Yeah, it's a
Wow,
one of two Americans.
50%. And was
50%.
it less than 1%? Am I correct in saying that?
It's about
Before,
less than 1%. Yeah, less than 1%. So it's
which
very rare you have ERP specialty care network, just given the challenges with it. The Atlantic actually wrote an article about it in 2015,
okay, yeah, wow,
which was so it's changed a lot since then.
yeah. So
We
just
had a fight though. It was a like I mean I'm telling you like there were insurance companies who would not let us in past their cafeteria.
yeah,
Right? They would say like we want to meet with them, and we had to go. We literally went door to door across the United States to try to get this covered. And what we ended up doing still is inside the community. This is actually where the community played a huge role in getting this insurance coverage to happen because people in the community would voluntarily tell us their health insurance information, and we'd ask them directly, like, "Look, we're using this information." We go in to talk to insurance companies to help them surface the size or help surface the size of the OC problem. And the community members knew that. And said, look, here's my health insurance plan. I have company A, company B. And so what we would do is we would go to these insurance plans and say, look, you have 500, even 1,000, 10,000 people who are suffering with OCD. They're part of our community. And we'd also ask the people, like, how many of you are able to access an ERP specialist affordably? And very few people actually could. And we would say, out of these people, less than 1% can actually afford access to, an OCD specialist. And the problem is, like, if you can't get access to OCD specialist care and you have OCD, you're in a really tough position. Like, I mean, it's not just tough for you personally. It's a clinical problem. Like, you are actually at risk of developing comorbidities. You're at risk of seeing significant heart or experiencing significant hardship. And so, and when that happens, unfortunately, in the U.S. healthcare system, costs start to increase. And so payers, these health insurers, were literally, not managing your population when they could within NOCD's community. And that was the way in which we got access to insurance contracts because we're like, look, like, how can we just best serve these people who are trying to access treatment? And they're like, look, just be a provider because, technically you have provider services and we have a system to pay providers. And that was what allowed us to kind of connect the dots and start the treatment. So yeah, so it's been a huge journey. And less than 1% of people with OCD can access evidence-based treatment. And now it's 1 of 2 people. And we're not going to stop until it's 2 of 2 people. But,
yeah.
And there's more work to be done to do that. But there's been a considerable amount of work already done.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see. And obviously you're not just US, Australia, UK. Where else do you operate now? Like where people can get therapy?
We operate inside and outside the US. Yeah, inside and outside the US. So
okay.
if you're outside the US and you get treatment, yeah, you can come into the NOC platform.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah, like I said, like that this clinical sessions are more than doubled in a year, which just shows the exponential growth, right? How it took you 6 years to what felt probably like real slow progress or painful progress at times to now it's just that graph's just shooting up, which is awesome.
It's one thing I'll say though too is we've taken our time to build out the infrastructure underneath the company, meaning making sure that we can appropriately identify people who are suffering in silence in the community who need help and then to get them into treatment, to make sure that our treatment processes work really well with with our therapists, right? And we have so much that we do internally to manage the experience, so it doesn't feel like one big company, but it feels very personalized, right? Yeah. And so we've taken a lot of time to build all of that infrastructure out. And I think that's actually one of the differentiators and why we've been able to see such progress in the last 12 to 18 months is because we've been able to leverage that infrastructure to give a better and better member experience every single day. And that's our focus. Like we don't think about how do we just keep scaling sessions. Like we know that's a byproduct of offering a really good treatment experience for people. And if it's not a great experience, we want to hear about it. And like we hear at times like things that go right and things that go wrong. And we actually, in our website, like, we allow people to post about their experience in an unfiltered way every day. And we learn
Yeah.
from feedback, like what we need to do differently and what we should keep doing. And that's like that process too of continuous improvement is what's gotten us to this point. Like we've taken that approach from the day we started NOCD therapy in 2019 until today. And as you keep doing that every day, you just kind of have compounding effects.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. Yeah, and I didn't mean to highlight the clinical sessions as like that is a goal, but it's for me that's the fruit on the tree. You know, that's the reason you got so many apples on your tree is because you've watered the tree, you've planted it well. You know, whatever else you need to do for a tree. And so I think it's like if that's blooming out, like you're saying, everything else is being done very well. And if it wasn't,
a million,
it wouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a million sessions, over a million sessions. We crossed that watermark about a few months ago. So
Wow. Congrats.
a million since 2019. So but like, I think to your point though, it's like it's watering the tree. Also, making sure that the tree only can function if you have really great therapists.
Yeah.
And really great clinical leadership. And it starts there. Like we really try to make sure that, we do everything that we can to support our therapists. And that's, there's no company without our therapists, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that's important. Like I think therapists need the right resources, the right support, the right training, continuous training in order to really consistently be effective and to keep having a great professional experience. So we try to really embody that too.
I agree. Yeah, that's worth highlighting. Like I think, Patrick and Patrick McGrath and colleagues have done an incredible job clinically with the training and onboarding and like you said, how much training you put into therapists who are already qualified, obviously, but how much training you put in them before they see anyone through the NOCD platform. Is worth acknowledging, right? Because people might just see, who am I getting when I sign up to NOCD? Well, actually, they've been through very rigorous stages before they ever see you.
Yeah, so our process goes, there's training after you get hired. So the intensive hiring process with interviewing and whatnot. Then you get to training. And then when you get through training, you have to go into testing. So every therapist at NOCD has to go through what we call nine CAMs. CAMs are like the tests that we have. And then once they pass those exams, then they can be like officially a live network therapist. And our definition of live, a live network therapist where they're independently functioning. And so there's a huge process, and that process has been built through, just through experience over the years. But I think the question is why, like, what has gotten us to this point? Like you bring up the session still as being like a byproduct of the work. I think it comes down to one. I mean, there's a real problem here for stigmatized. There's a real problem here, I think, where stigmatized conditions like OCD, they just have not gotten the attention they deserve, and people have unnecessarily suffered, and like people like us in our company have actually suffered. So like we know what it's like. Like at the end of the day, like there are people in this company who have OCD, have loved ones with OCD, have treated OCD professionally for a very long time, have become friends with people with OCD. So it's like a lot of people in this company who care about the mission. And I think, like, at the end of the day, like, as humans, we're more art than science, right? Like, when you have a bunch of people who care, you're going to figure out how to actually solve the problem. So everyone brings like a diverse perspective. But it starts with people who actually care, right? And I think that's something that's in retrospect, that's been very important.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. And no doubt it's come across on this podcast that, you care about helping people with OCD. Yes, it's a business and a business is for profit, but you ultimately care about the patients, the people with OCD. And that just also makes good business, because if you care, they feel looked after, they want to stay. If they have a relapse, they'll come back to NOCD. And why wouldn't they if they've had a good time and it's been helpful? And I think, you guys, and that's what I was saying earlier with all my interactions with the people at OCD, everyone I've dealt with, they care. That's the vibe again. Every time I spoke to you, you always talked from the point of the benefit of the end user, or members, as you call them, right?
Right.
And that shines through, you know. So I think that's worth highlighting.
Yeah. Well, I'd say this too, Sue. I appreciate you saying that. Like the way we define it is the goal isn't the business. The business is the mechanism to get us to the
Yeah.
goal, which is to end the global OC crisis, which then unlock our ability to end the global mental health crisis.
Yeah.
But it's like the goal isn't the business. The mechanism is the business to get to the goal, which is to solve the problem. And that's where our heads are at. Like we ultimately just want to solve this problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
So,
Yeah. It's the vehicle for change.
right.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything going on at NOCD or coming up at NOCD that you want to share?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, like we're heads down right now. Like our business is um is focused on delivering excellent treatment to people that have OCD related conditions. We are likely going to expand the service line for people with those related conditions, where we might start to offer virtual med management services as well as virtual intensive therapy services for people who need more care. We want to be really thoughtful about how we best do that. So that's coming soon. Um, and our goal is with those additional services, we could probably more deeply help people and give people an easier, treatment experience going forward. And so that's one thing. Beyond that, we've invested quite a bit into OC awareness, and so we're looking to do more and more with OC awareness. And there are some updates that we'll share related to that here throughout the course of the year. But there's some, we've and I didn't even mention this, but like in 2022, we had the idea of what if we were able to go in and redefine OCD's connotation in society. And so we launched the No OCD campaign, and to get people to actually know about what the condition is like. And Howie Mandel, a famous comedian, became our spokesperson. And so we were able to, in the last 3 years, have an opportunity to pretty much brand all across the US and millions and millions of stations about, we've been able to showcase our brand and showcase what OCD is all about. And I think the stat is, I think there's been 10% to 15% of the US that has actually now seen our ads consistently enough where they can choose, or they can like be talking about the Howie Mandel commercial. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen that commercial. And they know about OCD is no longer a joke. It's not like what you see in the movies, right? And it's like, I think that's really impactful. And we want to do more of that. Like we just recently were listening to one social media content creator, and all of a sudden, like they talked about the fact that they listened to Lil Wayne on his podcast talk about our commercial. And I was like, that to me was a very aha moment. It's like, why if we can actually have this impact, just like from 2017, when like that person in UK went on, This Morning and started talking about, the NoC platform, like we knew we were onto something. It's if Lil Wayne can go on his podcast and start talking about a commercial, like he took a second to take a step back to think about our commercial after it played, to like reflect on his own symptoms and to talk about it on his own podcast. Like that had that effect. Imagine what else we could do here for awareness. And frankly, too, like that's the last part of the problem that needs to be solved. So if you think about it holistically, like when I was going through treatment, and when many of us were going through treatment, and like back in the day, you had problems with, one, getting identified if you had OCD. It's like 14 to 17 years. Two, you had a hard time accessing evidence-based therapy. And then three, you had a hard time getting support between sessions. And we started with support. Well, support between sessions and accessing therapy, that's becoming easier and easier now. The last big piece of the puzzle to really solve, and we're starting to solve it, to really solve it, is awareness related to OCD symptoms, to the point where you can actually flip the societal connotation about OCD. It's no longer a joke. It's no longer used as an adjective. It's actually known, everywhere as being a crippling chronic condition. And if I think what this commercial has shown me and the reaction to it is that it actually can solve that problem, right? I think with enough awareness, you actually can solve that connotation challenge today. And you've seen it get solved in other populations for other issues like smoking and whatnot, and different words that were used, negatively. But like, I think you can change society's connotation. And if you do that, you're going to ultimately get most people identified way sooner in their journey, even those with the more complex symptoms. Because if you think about it, one last thing here, Stu, like people are comfortable today talking about going to therapy. Like that stigma has been lifted of going to therapy in the last, 10 years. But why people go to therapy, that's still stigmatized, especially for people with OCD. Like all the intrusive thoughts that are sexual, religious, violent, existential. Like people don't talk about those fears. It's not like, a great conversation. So we have to find a way to first and foremost get OCD known where it's crippling chronic condition. And it also has to be known that it manifests in those formats for people to actually get the treatment they need. So that's like the next wave for NOCD, is to develop the services a little bit more deeply for medication management, intensive therapy, while also at the same time driving just considerably more awareness in society.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, obviously I'm glad you brought up that campaign, because it's definitely worth talking about, because that would have cost the company tons of money, right? To run a national campaign like that wouldn't have been cheap. So, and then obviously it really helped a lot of people, as you say, drive awareness, and the fact that Little Wayne's talking about it is an awesome, awesome highlight. I want to be respectful of your time. So is there anything else you want to say on OCD or the story or anything like that?
Yeah, nothing else to do. I appreciate your time today. Actually, one really small last point. So related to awareness, the reason we believe that long term, like when NOCD scales and we help people, like there's the business, to be a functional business, you have to have some margin to cover your costs. Well, what we like to do is we like to reinvest that margin back into raising awareness to help more people. Like, so what's going to happen is, like, we look at our NOCD therapy business essentially as a vehicle, like I mentioned, to solve a problem, but like it's actually solving the problem. So it's giving us, resources needed to actually go in and reinvest in awareness. And I think that's actually like an important point, because in my opinion, that's how this problem is solved. Like that's how you'll get the resources needed to actually solve this problem. But no, I think that for us, no, I mean, I think we've covered it all. The story is pretty well known. Like the challenges from 2014 to 2020 that we faced ultimately gave us the strength to go in and scale the company from 2020 through 2025. And I believe it'll help us beyond. But I'm just really grateful for your time, Stu, and for your willingness to have me on, and your patience to listen to all the details here with this story.
Yeah, no, well, it's been a pleasure, obviously, getting to know you and growing alongside NOCD, and you guys supporting my work as well. And I've seen many times on the trips I've done to the States, and you hear like how hard you work and also how hard your team work. So it's definitely well deserved, the success you guys have. So yeah, awesome.
Oh, thanks, Stu. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. And thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us, please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NOCD for supporting our work. And if you want to find out more about NOCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD Stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.